The Great Tyler Chicken War of 1914. This program was originally presented to the Smith County Historical Society on August 7, 2012. How do you choose a history topic to research? Or does your topic choose you? Sometimes it's something that just ought to be done. Sometimes another person asks a question like, was there ever a socialist encampment in Tyler? And then there are the topics that just reach up and peck you on the nose while you are working on something else. I was struggling through my suffragette and socialist projects, scanning through reel after reel of the Tyler newspapers on microfilm. Then on February 26, 1914, I ran across this column on the local news page. It's by The Stranger in the City, a newcomer to Tyler who comments on the local scene. This particular column is entitled, Those Chickens. He says, in the last few days, I have had several people stop me and ask me to say something in this column about people allowing their chickens to run around and bother neighbors' flowers, gardens, etc. And he closes with, from the standpoint of justice, chickens should be kept penned up. This is a free country, and every citizen should have the perfect right of raising anything he wants to. But when it bothers someone else, the right should stop. Tomorrow I will say more on this subject. And he did. Why wouldn't it be a good plan for the women of the city to take this matter up and see if something could not be done to put a stop to the practice? There is nothing that aids in making a city beautiful like pretty lawns and flowers. But how in the world is Tyler to have pretty lawns and flowers if the chickens are going to scratch everything up? It seemed logical to me. Why weren't the chickens in town penned up? The simple answer was that law and tradition were both on the side of the wandering chicken. When colonists came to America with its almost never-ending forests and prairies, the law evolved that all sorts of livestock ranged freely. But farmers had to fence their crops and gardens in to protect them from being eaten or damaged. That worked well until towns and cities developed. Farmers tried to improve their livestock breeds, and trains started killing cattle and getting sued. Gradually, more and more of the land was fenced, and people began to resent the town hogs rooting in the garbage and the town cow munching on the shrubbery, not to mention what they left behind. Smith County began holding stock law elections in 1878 and ran them every few years, at least through 1917. Tyler outlawed free-roaming horses and cattle in the downtown area in 1891, and any hogs within 3/4 of a mile of the courthouse in 1904. But that still left chickens to fend for themselves, legally considered free commoners. My story starts in 1914, in what historians call the Progressive Era. It was a time of social activism and political reform. If there was a problem, local government and professionals should address it. The City Beautiful movement, one aspect of progressivism, called for urban planning, including parks, in order to help alleviate some aspects of poverty through cleanliness and shared beauty, as well as encouraging pleasing horticulture to enhance and promote the community. At that point, Tyler was about to go over 15,000 in population. It had a well-established, educated professional class that traveled broadly. The women's club movement was very strong here. The county would ship out the first train carload of rose bushes the next year, 1915, quite possibly as a side effect of the City Beautiful movement and the increased demand for flowering plants. Tyler fancied itself a city with street after street of beautiful homes, nearly all with front yard fences, the better to keep out wandering livestock. This is the Douglas Pollard home on South Fannin, a street looking north on Bodark Street, a house on South Bodark Street, the Mathis house, and the Brown home, all with fenced front yards. The new neighborhood style, however, was to get rid of those front yard fences. As early as 1870, Frank Scott wrote in The Art of Beautifying Suburban Home Grounds that homeowners should throw their front grounds open together to enrich all who take part in the exchange. It is unchristian to hedge from the sight of others the beauties of nature which it has been our good fortune to create or secure. It is unneighborly. In her article entitled Chickens' Menace to Civic Beauty, written in 1913, Dallas Morning News columnist Pauline Periwinkle wrote, "Then what about that clause in the City Beautiful manual about taking down fences and having a continuous sweep of well-kept lawn as one of the first steps toward the desired goal?" On March 3rd, the Stroller noted, "I have written lots of articles that people read and comment upon, but I don't believe I have ever written one that seemed to strike the popular chord of approval like the one about letting the chickens run at large. It seems that this evil has reached a critical situation in this city. It is time that something should be done about it. It is a matter that is up to the citizens. Why not get busy and see if the council will not pass an ordinance in regard to it?" He invited correspondence, pro and con, be sent to Chicken Editor, Courier-Times, and the letters poured in. On the 11th he wrote, "The mind of man cannot conceive of any one thing that is more exasperating, or of any one thing that has caused more hard feelings, more spiteful talk, more real disgust and discouragement than the allowing of chickens to torment your neighbors. Flowers and gardens help a town morally. They keep people contented. The influence is felt in everyday life. They keep people in a pleasant frame of mind that is felt in every circle, even in business. They help. But what is Tyler going to do about it?" But after a while, he started to hear the other side. "Why, they have voted out the saloons so we can't drink. They voted out the pool halls so we can't play pool. They won't let us spit on the sidewalk. And they even send an officer down to our homes to make us clean up, whether we want to be clean or not. They won't let us keep a hog within a mile of the courthouse, and now they want to make us shut up the chickens. A man don't have any liberties anymore." At last the debate turned to poetry, as it almost had to in that poetic age. "Once upon a morning dreary, as I rested weak and weary from planting flower seeds galore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a scratching, as of something madly wrecking at my flower bed. 'Tis some ghastly harrow working in my flower beds, only this and nothing more." And then a little further down, "When I heard that awful clucking, out into my yard I hurried. Sticks and stones I madly gathered, which I hurled, though aim was erring, at that feathered fiend, uprooting all my year's work at one sitting. Through with madness of despair, striking space and nothing more. Prophet still, if bird or devil, tell me, thrice cursed chicken, shall I ever raise a flower in this chicken-pestered life, if no chicken law confine thee, and thy scratchings not suppressed? Or perhaps when life is ended and life's sorrows all are o'er, may I take one small sweet blossom to the happy golden shore? Quoth the rooster, nevermore." Well, Tyler's Women's Progressive Association met on March 18th and unanimously endorsed the campaign against chickens running at large. Unless an ordinance be passed to the effect that all chickens must be confined to the owner's own premises, no attempt to beautify the town can possibly be successful. By the end of the month, Judge Walden Beard suggested that only the women of Tyler be allowed to vote on the chicken question. All married women, widows, and others over 21 years of age should be allowed to vote. Women should hold the election, and no men be allowed to have anything to do with it. The reason, he said, was that men do not raise the chickens nor the flowers, and are therefore not entitled to have any part in the disposition of them. This didn't happen, but if it had, it would have been the very first time Tyler women would have been allowed to vote publicly on anything. They wouldn't be able to vote in primaries until 1918 or general elections until 1919. At last, D.M. Edwards, signing himself as Free Rooster, had had enough, In an article entitled "The Other Side," he wrote, "Are the people of Tyler going to be so foolish as to surrender up their last rights just to gratify some little freckle-faced woman who has nothing to do but to get in an automobile and fly through the wind while her hundreds of humble sisters in this town are struggling with the present high cost of living to feed her children and self? And as for East Tyler, we will say that we intend to fight for Polly and her baby's rights to a finish, and that her chickens shall not be put up to gratify her freckle-faced sister who has no babies to feed and is too busy with high society to raise a few kids. And as to the few flowers the old hen and her baby scratch up, they are nothing as to compare to the good eating that comes from old Dominic to 9 little hungry waifs of the average poor man's family of Tyler. And are you going to take the last luscious mouthful from these poor folks' children just to gratify the little freckle-faced woman who has only 3 pots of flowers and is too fussy to get along with herself, let alone her neighbors?" However, a committee headed by Therese Kaiser Lindsay, wife of Judge S.A. Lindsay, drew up a petition that stated, "We, the undersigned citizens of Tyler, respectfully petition your honorable body, the mayor and city council, to pass an ordinance to take effect within 10 days of passage, confining all domestic fowls to the owner's premises within a mile of the square, with proper penalties for failure to comply therewith." 375 Tyler residents, men and women, signed the petition, and Mrs. Lindsay presented it to the City Council on May 1st. The council studied the proposal and did nothing. The topic came up briefly in Tyler during the spring of 1915 and died again, while similar battles raged through other Texas communities. In the spring of 1916, the Stroller was asked if he would take up the chicken question again, but he declined. "Honestly, we don't see why it wouldn't be just as reasonable to keep pigs and other animals to live off the neighbors, but the hogs and the goat are regulated by law, and the chickens are not, so there you are. But we are not going to make any more fight on chickens, not as long as we feel like we do at present at any rate. We may once in a while tell about the Tyler chickens' neighbors in other towns, but as far as this town is concerned, someone else will have to do it." On April 6, 1917, the United States entered World War I. The previous month, Charles Pack had organized the National War Garden Commission and had launched the War Garden Campaign to increase food production. Posters equated vegetable gardens with patriotism. And this was a time period of some really beautiful posters. So there's the War Gardens Victorious, the war cry of food keeps the war garden going, preserve, food is ammunition, don't waste it, and my favorite, canned vegetable, fruit, and the Kaiser too. As garden planting season approached in early February 1918, the City Council finally acted on the chicken ordinance, proposing that the running at large of chickens and other domestic fowls is a public nuisance, and persons convicted for allowing chickens to run at large would be subject to a fine not exceeding $25. A voter promptly wrote into the Tyler paper, charging that the ordinance retarded food production and was undemocratic. I believe the greatest service that can be rendered by the citizenship of our country is in an effort to win the war, and I think the only method is strict democratic principles. Now, as I see it, those principles are based on the wishes of the majority of the people. As I see this chicken ordinance, it is altogether a one-sided affair because it pleases about 10% of the people and is a detriment to the other 90%. I can't see where our boys in France or our sick in Tyler will derive any benefit out of the production of flowers. As I see it, this ordinance originated from the agitation against chickens for the sole purpose of protecting flowers. The majority of the people who have garden spots have them fenced. Also, many people who have gardens have chickens too. We read every day that anyone that interfered with production in any farm is interfering with the prosecution of the law. Therefore, if my chickens interfere with my neighbor's garden, he has a perfect right under the law to kill them, brand me as a traitor to my country, and I should be tried in the courts as such. So let's stop legislating against production and put our shoulder to the wheel, win this war, and down Kaiserism. Let the chickens go. Make gardens. Put our time into doing something for humanity. Let us get together and ask the city authorities in their lawmaking to eliminate everything that will retard production and give us the right to grow chickens and a pig. Now, dear editor, these are only my personal views and ideas of democracy versus Kaiserism. Yours truly, for more chickens and eggs, gardens and flowers. A voter protested in vain because on March 1st, 1918, the City Council added the chicken ordinance to the books, citing, "The present emergency and crisis confronted by our government make it necessary that the conservation of food products be encouraged and protected. The growth, cultivation, and the production of food products in gardens materially augments the supply of foods, and the cultivation of gardens in this city is not engaged in by its inhabitants to the extent that should be, because chickens and other domestic fowls are permitted to run at large and, as a consequence, to destroy the same." Opponents began to organize immediately, with 75 citizens attending a mass meeting to discuss proper measures. A little over 2 weeks after the ordinance became law, Mrs. T.P. Marshall of Dallas, visiting the Tyler Chamber of Commerce as a representative of the Government Food Savings and General Work Campaign, castigated the anti-chicken ordinance folks as slackers and hinted that they might be classed as German sympathizers. This offended Will Marsh and others, who said, "The chicken ordinance is a matter of opinion and does not have anything to do with a man's view of the war." Mr. Marsh did not believe that the people of Tyler who favored chickens running at large, like they have for the past 30 years, are to be classed as slackers, and that they are just as patriotic as those who believe they should be confined. Tyler people will buy war-saving stamps, Liberty bonds, and support the war program in every other way, regardless of whatever they believe with reference to chickens, hogs, dogs, cats, or anything else. The opponents of the chicken ordinance succeeded in getting a referendum vote into the next election. Then the feathers really flew. Mrs. R.H. Brown wrote into the Courier-Times that, "Until recently, the matter of not allowing chickens to run at large was more of a question of civic pride and beauty than utility. Now it is far more a move for conservation. Just now we need to be practical and useful above everything else. The penning of chickens just now is not solely for benefit of increased production of this fowl, but for another very important reason, that everybody may have an unmolested war garden where there are unfenced plots of ground on the premises." Frank, for fair play, would have none of it. Are we being loyal to our country, our men, our boys who are giving their lives to win the greatest and most terrible war of the ages, and which bids fair to become more fierce every day, when we attempt to stay an ordinance that has a tendency to lessen any supply of food or the buying of war stamps? A very large proportion of our town is composed of the working class of people. Few of us own automobiles or have independent incomes, but most live from the pay envelope, and it is only by being rigidly economical and doing all our own work that we are able to pay our bills and do our bit in purchasing small bonds and thrift stamps. Our gardens and chickens mean much to us. Think of the worth of your flowers against the worth of the chickens. When universal peace has been established, we can all rejoice and work together to make Tyler the city beautiful in form and in work. But until then, lend your energies toward food production for ourselves, food for our soldiers, food for our allies. This is patriotism, Mr. Voter. In the name of humanity, which shall it be? Chickens are civic beauty. The referendum vote was taken, and the chickens won. They remain free to roam and scratch the streets, yards, and unfenced gardens of Tyler. I haven't looked through all of the Tyler newspapers for the 1920s, but I did find an article in the Dallas Morning News, 1938, entitled, "It is quite lawful for Tyler chickens to raid your yard." That sent me back to the Tyler papers for February 6, 1938. Another generation of newspapermen took up the cause. We are just as dead set as the next fellow against this business of cluttering up the statute books with laws that usually are unnecessary and almost invariably are unenforceable. But we are telling the City Commission today that there ought to be a law, or at least an ordinance, against prowling chickens. Today, Tyler householders who envision a beautiful flower garden or a luscious spring vegetable plot might as well give up the idea if they live next to chicken owners whose charges are footloose. It appears that the only thing for the aggrieved to do is to erect a fence, whether or not it is an unsightly barrier that fits in with the landscape. Sam Nash, Tyler's longtime local cartoonist, took up the cause on 2 consecutive Sundays. There's one with a lady trying the garden, but the chickens are looking over the fence, and another one with a chicken looking at what's on the menu coming up out of that seed catalog. City Manager George D. Fairtrace, in response to dozens of complaints, asked the city attorney to draw up a new chicken ordinance to be presented to the next City Commission meeting. It is a hard matter to control, even if you do have an ordinance, he pointed out. He said he received a phone call yesterday from an angry housewife who complained of a neighbor's chickens scratching up her garden. "People who want to raise chickens ought to move to the country," the housewife told him. The Courier-Times noted that the city must be prepared to enforce its provisions, and they should have what chickens haven't: teeth. The commission meeting came and went, but no new chicken ordinance. So when did chickens get officially penned up in Tyler? The first permanent ordinance did not appear until March 7, 1947. Chickens had to be confined on the owner's premises, or the owner could be fined not more than $200. The rules were refined on November 5, 1954, when pens, coops, or enclosures were required 50 feet from any home. The current Tyler City ordinances, found online, state that only 6 fowl may be kept per household, unless in an area zoned agricultural. All must be kept in a pen, and the pen must be at least 50 feet from any property line. Not all Texas municipalities have outlawed free-range chickens. Just this spring, Bastrop, about 30 miles southeast of Austin, adopted a Farm Street historic chicken sanctuary to slow down traffic and protect its roaming chickens in a certain part of town. The vehicles are having to dodge the chickens. Actually, urban chickens are a huge hot topic right now, favored by locavores and food sustainability groups, those who like to know what their food is eating, some new immigrants, and just plain chicken lovers. This month's Southern Living magazine features an 8-page spread on Dixie chickens. Austin has been sponsoring a funky chicken coop tour every April, and Raleigh, North Carolina holds a tour de coop every May. While chickens may no longer be allowed to legally wander the streets of Tyler, they remain a part of our community, whether in the Azalea District, an East Tyler barrio, or Holly Tree. I've certainly heard a rooster crow in the distance from my back porch more than once.